Hello and welcome to the First Time Travelers presentation. My name is Ashley Toomey Flynn and I'm the Education Abroad Scholarships Advisor. Today, I'll be going over advice that we've collected from study abroad alumni and our own personal experiences to aid students who are traveling, studying, or interning abroad independently for the first time. Today, I'll be going over setting priorities, doing research, some financial considerations, culture shock, and self-care. When I got back from studying abroad, a friend said to me, "You have two limiting resources when traveling abroad, time and money." I didn't realize how much truth this held until I reflected on my study abroad experience. I was so pumped for my experience abroad, but I wasn't ready to leave because I had so much I had wanted to do. I realized that one of the things I would have done over would have been setting priorities. This was especially important as this was my first time going abroad. I was a first-generation college student and only my grandparents had been abroad before during the Korean conflict. I didn't really know what I was doing and it felt like I ended up wasting a lot of time while I was abroad. With that in mind, I highly encourage you to set some priorities before you set foot on your flight. Decide what you want to accomplish. If you're studying abroad, then you need to make time for academics to be successful and plan a schedule that allows for you to study and also have time for your other priorities. Please also remember that if you're studying abroad on exchange, that the academic systems across the world are quite different, and that you may want to budget extra time for studying and group work. Think about the other things that you want to do. Do you want to travel, or do you want to prioritize fine dining experiences? Do you want to have great experiences like going to concerts, shows, or museums? Are you trying to learn the language? Because that will require some planning on how to ensure you use the language on a regular basis. I often found that I would try to speak German with locals and they would automatically switch to English when they heard my accent. So I had to get creative in making sure that I got to use the language skills I was working so hard on a regular basis. Finally, how important is it for you to make connections and friends while you're abroad? If this is an important goal, then you'll want to be at all the major program and university orientation events or other networking opportunities. Remember that whatever you decide to prioritize is going to cost time and money, so set priorities ahead of time to achieve your goals. Also consider that you will likely make friends abroad where you can do some of these things together. Setting priorities will help guide the decisions you end up making. I wasn't super keen on researching stuff when I got ready to study abroad because I just wanted to go with the flow and do whatever struck my fancy. I was also super intimidated by all the information that was out there. After I'd been abroad a while, I wholeheartedly regretted this strategy as I missed out on doing some great things and seeing the sights while I was there. Don't be like Ashley and do some homework ahead of the time. I recommend connecting with other study abroad alumni from your program or exchange or students who went to your city. In most cases, your study abroad advisor can put you in contact with other students or you can connect with a peer advisor. I also recommend reading some study abroad or travel blogs. There's quite a bit out there on Pinterest, Instagram, and TikTok that give information for what to do in different locations, the quirks of different places, packing, and other tips. I highly recommend setting aside some time regularly to do some research and plan. This will help to calm your nerves and also give you a game plan for your time abroad. Set aside time on, say, Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, or whatever works for you, for about an hour, maybe from 10 to 11 a.m., to just look at what there is to do in your city and sketch out the things that you'd like to do once you're in country. Once you know a bit about your local city, then expand to the country and then the surrounding countries. One of the things that I didn't do was have a good idea of how I was going to get from the airport to where I was staying my first night. This was a mistake. It worked out in the end, but it made for a very stressful day. So make a plan. If you plan to take local transportation, a cab, an Uber, or whatever form of transportation you'll take to your destination. Don't be like Ashley. Also, I came from Arkansas, which, like Georgia, doesn't rely heavily on public transportation the way that many places across the world do. This made me very nervous as I didn't want to constantly be lost in a foreign country. There's quite a bit of information online, and talking to other students can really make this feel much more manageable. If your exchange or program sends you information, please be sure to read all of the information that they give you so that you make sure you understand what's going on. One of the biggest concerns about studying abroad for me was money. My colleagues Jessie Malone Ferreira and Andrea Henriquez have recorded a great presentation on creating a budget for study abroad. I highly encourage you to check it out. One of the things that I wish I would have done before studying abroad was to start saving early. I had about a year to prepare before I left, but I wish I had saved more money than what I did. In the time leading up to your departure date, if there are holidays or birthdays that you celebrate, be sure to ask for things that you'll need when you're abroad, like money, a decent suitcase or backpack if you don't have one, a good rain jacket, or other potentially expensive items that you'll need once you're abroad. Once you're abroad, take advantage of tours hosted by your university. These are often cost-effective ways to travel without having to think too much, and a great way to connect with other students at your university. Outside the U.S., many countries offer worthwhile discounts to students on local transportation, meals, and more. Keep your university-issued ID with you at all times, as it's like a golden ticket. One of the things that I didn't expect when I went abroad is that many places use cash much more than we do in the United States. This was a pretty big transition for me, as I use my debit card everywhere at home, and if I was at a farmer's market or making a small purchases, most places would require me to pay in cash or to use a local bank card. Do a little bit of research ahead of time in case this is the case where you're going. Also, if I use my credit card or my debit card a bunch, then I quickly racked up foreign transaction fees. There are a few credit cards that don't charge a foreign transaction fee. Capital One, for instance, has one. If you're in the process of establishing your credit, which would allow you to have a higher credit balance, then I would get one of those cards as soon as you know that you're going abroad. Please be responsible about this and pay your balance off on a regular basis so that you don't end up in debt before you go abroad. When traveling internationally, you'll want to check what will happen with your phone. Some major phone carriers already have built-in international coverage, but others don't. Please be sure to understand this before you go abroad. Most smartphones will work on Wi-Fi, but I found that many Wi-Fi networks were closed and so I couldn't get online. If you have a phone that has an international plan, this can eliminate this concern. One thing to note is that you'll need to know how to call local numbers while you're abroad. This means learning the international code and practicing a few times to figure out how to successfully call someone, as it can be a little frustrating in the moment whenever you can't get through. One of the things you may encounter is people selling train or tram tickets. In many cases, these tickets have already been used, and if your ticket is checked while you're on the train, then you may be fined. Don't buy tickets from strangers. Instead, get your tickets from the kiosk or from the train teller or from a friend who has extra tickets. Finally, there are some awesome cheap flights out there. I once flew to the UK from Germany for about €35, but you want to be sure you know how these cheap flights work. If you plan to check your luggage, often checking your luggage will cost as much as a flight to check. So I usually just carried all of my stuff in my carry-on. But also know that there are different regulations for carry-on bags that you'll want to know about. This is where checking the carrier's website for regulations on baggage and in-flight services is super useful. It's also useful to ask study abroad alumni about their experiences with cheap flights. Culture shock is the feeling of disorientation experienced by someone who is suddenly subjected to unfamiliar culture, way of life, or set of attitudes. I didn't think that this would impact me when I studied abroad, as I had traveled in the U.S. before and had had some different experiences, but I really wasn't prepared for how different life would be for me in Germany than it was at home. So when I first got to Germany, I was so excited and had a great time. But as I experienced life on public transportation, where there were a wide variety of interpretations of personal space, where I went to the grocery store and wasn't fast enough collecting my groceries for the teller, that I started to get frustrated. I didn't understand why they didn't do things the quote-unquote right way, and I got down. I kept finding myself in situations where I thought I knew what I was doing, but things didn't go the way that I anticipated. This is pretty normal, and it's culture shock. Often the first time that students experience culture shock is when they come to college for the first time and life is pretty different from what they were used to. It doesn't mean that life at home was bad or that life at college is better, it's just different. So there were times that I wasn't happy in Germany, and that was okay and part of the process. There are times that I'm unhappy now in a city that I've lived in for 7 years as I continue to adjust. Just remember that you're playing in a familiar playground with a new set of slightly different rules. It can be unsettling, but it helps to approach these situations with curiosity. Before you go abroad, try to do some research about the quirks of this new place, culture, and food. While you're there, ask questions when it's appropriate and talk to other international students about their experiences. It's good to know that you're not the only one navigating a new place and education system. If you feel like you're in over your head, then reach out to your study abroad advisor and they can help. In time, I came to appreciate the differences between German and American culture, but there were definitely times when I needed to take time for myself. To combat culture shock, take care of yourself. For me, this means staying on top of my health by continuing to take all of my medications. Studying abroad is often a time to explore yourself and different identities. You may feel great and think that you don't need to continue your health regime from when you were home, but be careful with this mindset, as life will continue to have its ups and downs while you're away. You're going to have bad days and you might lose your phone. That happens even at home. So continue to take care of yourself with your medications by getting enough sleep and regularly exercising. You may find that you need to adjust your sleep schedules. Germans ate dinner surprisingly late, and I often found that I didn't need to dedicate myself to regular exercise as I walked everywhere. But be mindful that even if you make adjustments, that you still need to get enough sleep and exercise. As an introvert, I really value my alone time, and I often turn down invitations to parties or other fun activities in favor of studying or doing my own thing. I wish that I would have made more time for these invitations and pushed myself to explore with others when I had the chance to do so. So if you feel safe, say yes to invitations to do things with others and create a healthy work-life balance. Finally, communicating with family and friends back in the U.S. can be tough with a time difference and being in a new place. Many students have found it useful to set up some boundaries about how much or how often they'll communicate with family and friends. This can be useful so that you don't get to feeling homesick because things are happening at home without you, or having your mom frantically call the Office of International Education because she hasn't heard from her student. Set up what works best for you and stay in touch the right amount. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please let us know if you have questions or concerns, and if you'd like to share tips from your international experience, please send them to us at education.abroad@oie.gatech.edu. We hope that you all have a fun, safe, and life-changing experience abroad, and we'll see you next time.